On the night of April 2nd, 1974, as I was being tucked into bed by my mama, I could not hide my excitement talking about my 8th birthday the next day. Birthdays were a big celebration in the Riverdale household and were used as a free pass from helping Daddy with morning farm work before school. I was used to going to school smelling like I had been rolling around with the pigs, so this was special to me that I would be extra clean the next day. Mama tiredly reminded me that the sooner I went to bed, the quicker my birthday would come. I was hesitant to Mama's suggestion at first, but soon gave in to my tired and heavy eyes. As soon as the sun peered through my window, my eyes shot open with joy. I quickly threw on a shirt and jeans as I ran through the house proclaiming, "It's my birthday! It's my birthday!" As I entered into the kitchen, my daddy, mama, sister, and brother were waiting for me with anxious grins on their faces. "Happy birthday, Mark," they all said in unison. My mama had made my favorite breakfast, chocolate biscuits and gravy with a fried egg. I was so excited to get to school to be with my friends that I did not even taste my breakfast. Scooping in my last bite of gravy, I jumped up and ran out the door, faintly hearing Mama say, "Have a good day." Walking down the road, I met up with my neighbors to catch the school bus. After hopping on the bus, we walked back to our normal seats of the last row of the bus. My friends let me have the window seat since today is my birthday, and I sat with my head against the glass, looking out into the blue sky and the green blur of grass and flowers as we drove. When we arrived to school, everyone filed off the bus and made our way to our designated classrooms. As she did every morning, Mrs. Porter, my fourth grade teacher, stood outside the classroom greeting her students as we scurried to our classes. This Wednesday morning was special because while I was being greeted by Mrs. Porter, she said, "Happy birthday, Mark," and handed me an individually wrapped peppermint. I could not hide the smile that spread across my entire face. Mrs. Porter had a way of making every student feel special and loved as soon as they stepped in her classroom. The rest of the school day went by as normal, headed to lunch and then to recess. Although I didn't give it much thought while we were playing tag outside, I did notice that the sky began to change colors. Clouds moved in, and wind started blowing more rapidly than before. At 3 p.m., the dismissal bell rang, and my neighbors and I went back to the school to wait for our bus to take us home. Our school bus pulled up, and we loaded on. Before I knew it, we were home. Wednesdays were one of my favorite days of the week because that meant church nights. Sycamore Church of Christ was just a few streets up from my house, and they have a church bus, which is an old school bus painted white, that is driven around to surrounded streets and neighborhoods and picks up kids to bring them to church and feed them dinner. Before the church bus came at 5 p.m., I had time to help my daddy serve the cows, horses, pigs, and chickens their afternoon feeding. I ran down to the barn in the backyard and found my daddy on the tractor carrying a bale of hay up to the far field for the cows. He yelled down to me and said, "Go ahead and take the feed to the chickens. Don't worry about the pigs. I'll give them slop later tonight." All of our animals were acting strange, making noises and running around. It was obvious that they were bothered by something. Daddy always said that animals can sense when something is going to happen. So off I went to get the feed and take it over to the chicken's pen. I hurried up fast and finished feeding so that I could go play with my older sister Sandy. Time passes so quickly when you are running and playing hide and seek, but before I knew it, the big white bus was pulling up in front of our house. As the bus arrived to church, all of us kids loaded off and ran to the great room of the church where dinner was served every week. This week, we were having spaghetti, white bread, and grape Kool-Aid. As everyone finished dinner, we threw away our trash and made our way to the sanctuary where service was being held. Pastor James stood behind the podium and was talking about God's grace when all of a sudden the power went out and thunder crashed over our heads. Cries from scared children broke out, and adults tried to keep everyone calm. Pastor James and the other church elders gathered in the back to try and figure out the cause of the outage and a plan for everyone else in the building. It felt like days went by while we sat in the dark when they finally announced that church was going to be dismissed and for everyone to get home safely. Panic broke out as everyone got up, gathered their belongings, and headed to their cars. All of us children were gathered up and walked to the blue awning in the back of the church, but the bus would not fit underneath, so we had to run to the bus. Storms have never scared me before until I saw the hail coming down. Golf ball sized hail was falling hard from the sky, indenting everything in sight. Our bus driver ran to the bus first to open the door, and he waved for us to follow and called, "Go!" As I was running, the hail was hitting me in the back so hard that it felt like I was being hit with a baseball over and over again. With everyone screaming and running as fast as they could, we scampered on bus while the driver quietly reassured us that everything was going to be just fine. I could not help but feel fear of the unknown that was happening in that moment. I sat on the bus with Sandy and asked her if everything was going to be okay. All she did was look at me and say, "I don't really know." The old bus was being blown all over the road by the wind, and as we were swerving, Sandy reached down and grabbed my hand. And in that moment, I knew she was scared too. The bus driver pulled up to our driveway. Sandy and I ran to our house, and Mama and Daddy were trying to get the radio to work, but all they were getting was static. Mama had already tucked my little brother Toby in the bed down in the basement. Daddy had put bunk beds in the basement for instances just like this one. Mama told me and Sandy to head down and wait for them. Mama and Daddy soon came down and explained to us that they did not know what was going on because the radio would not work and there were no signals to tell us what was happening. The storm carried on as thunder shook the house completely. Mama could tell that we were scared, so she decided to put us to bed and lay with us until we felt safe. As we lay there, I could not help but think that my birthday was ruined, and I did not even get to eat the cake that Mama promised me. I fell asleep with Mama rubbing my head and do not remember anything else from that night until the next morning. Waking up the next morning, it almost felt like everything was a dream. I got out of bed and groggily walked upstairs. Mama told me school was closed for the day. Daddy then told me that a tornado had come and passed through Putnam County, and that was what had happened the night before. But we were lucky, and the tornado had not done any damage to our house or land. Mama then put a piece of chocolate cake in front of me with a glass of whole milk and whispered, "Happy late birthday," in my ear. I was so happy I could hardly stand it. After breakfast, Daddy asked if I wanted to ride around town with him and look at the damage and find out what else went on. So, of course, I agreed. While we were driving around, I could not believe my eyes. There was so much damage to houses, and some houses were completely gone. Only single rooms were standing where once a whole entire neighborhood stood. There were clothes in the trees and pieces of tin from people's roof in the trees as well. Thinking to myself, I have never seen anything like this, and how is this even real? I rode around with Daddy with my mouth open looking at the devastation of the tornado that had torn through our town. As we got back home later that afternoon, I got out of the car and just stared at my house. Mama, Sandy, and Toby were on the porch, and I knew that this would be a birthday I would never forget. Later in the week, we learned that the tornado was much more than just one tornado and devastated numerous states other than just our own. At least 148 tornadoes struck 13 states from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes over a 16-hour period from the afternoon of April 3rd, 1974, into the early morning hours of April 4th, 1974. When it was over, 330 people were dead and 5,484 were injured. Damage from all of the tornadoes combined added up to a path more than 2,500 miles long. April 3rd, 1974 was given the title of Black Wednesday to be remembered for years to come, but for me, I will always remember it as my Black birthday. Sitting back and thinking what started off as such a normal day, when I thought nothing can bring me down from the excitement of turning 8, I learned so much that day. The most important lesson being, do not take any day for granted because you never know what can happen.